Okay, let's dive right in. There's a really tense situation playing out right now in the Caribbean Sea. Now, on the surface, it looks like it's all about oil tankers and international sanctions. But if you dig just a little deeper, you'll see it's actually a preview of the biggest great power competition of our time.
So what's actually happening? Well, right now, the United States Coast Guard is out on the high seas, and they are actively stopping and seizing control of oil tankers, specifically the ones coming out of Venezuela. I mean, this is a pretty dramatic, forceful move to be making in international waters.
Now, the official story you'll get from Washington is that this is all part of what they call an unprecedented pressure campaign against Venezuela. The stated goal here is pretty clear: enforce sanctions and, put the squeeze on the Maduro government. It's all being presented as a kind of regional law enforcement action.
But that's where this whole story takes a really sharp turn. Because what if this pressure campaign, this whole naval operation, isn't really aimed at Venezuela at all? What if it's aimed at a much, much bigger player on the world stage?
Because you see, when you follow the oil, you find out the real target here isn't Caracas, it's Beijing. And as soon as you realize that, this entire crisis completely transforms. It's not what it seems at all.
And this, right here, is the absolute key to understanding what's going on. The tankers the U.S. is grabbing aren't just random ships. They are carrying Venezuelan crude oil that is specifically headed for China. So this stops being just a U.S.-Venezuela issue and becomes a direct confrontation over China's energy security.
So you might be wondering, why can't Beijing just shrug this off, find oil somewhere else? Well, for China, Venezuelan oil isn't just a simple business deal. It is deeply strategic. First, it helps them be less dependent on the super volatile Middle East. Second, it gives them a bit of leverage in their relationship with the U.S. It also lets them show the world that they stand by their economic partners. And, oh yeah, it protects the billions and billions of dollars they've already poured into the country.
So what we're looking at isn't just about ships on the ocean. It's actually a conflict between two totally different ideas about how the world is supposed to work. Let's break down these competing doctrines, because it's a real clash of titans.
The main tool the U.S. is using here is something called long-armed jurisdiction, and it's a wild concept. It's basically the American practice of saying, hey, our laws apply to you even if you're a foreign company on a foreign ship in the middle of the ocean. From the American point of view, it's a necessary tool, but for a lot of other countries, it feels like a massive overreach of power. And all of this is built on a much, much older idea, the Monroe Doctrine. I mean, we're talking about a policy that's been around for 2 centuries. It basically says the Western Hemisphere is America's backyard, and other big powers need to stay out. So seizing these tankers, it's a very 21st century way of enforcing a 19th century idea. And right here, you can see the two worldviews just slam into each other. The U.S. says, look, this is a legitimate use of sanctions and our sphere of influence to keep things stable. China fires back, calling it unilateral bullying, a total abuse of power that messes with the right of countries to trade freely, and just generally wreaks havoc on global energy markets. They are speaking completely different languages when it comes to international law.
But it's one thing to announce a blockade, and it is a completely different thing to actually enforce it. A really fascinating incident with just one tanker showed a surprising crack in American power, a kind of paradox. So let me introduce you to a ship called the Bella 1. This tanker was on the U.S. sanctions list, plain and simple. When the Coast Guard went to intercept it, the ship's captain just said no, refused to let them board. And just like that, you've got a standoff. So what happened next is the really crucial part. The U.S. Coast Guard, one of the most powerful maritime forces in the world, couldn't just storm the ship. They actually had to call for backup. For elite maritime security teams who were, and this is a direct quote from the sources, not currently nearby. They literally had to sit there and wait. And that right there is the paradox. The United States, with the most powerful military on Earth, announces this grand strategy, a blockade. But when one single tanker calls their bluff, they don't have the immediate tactical ability to enforce their will. And you can bet that this gap, this space between ambition and actual capability, is something adversaries like China are watching very, very closely. Okay, so this standoff can't just go on forever. It's way too tense. With such high stakes and powerful players involved, you gotta ask, where does this all go from here? Well, it looks like there are basically 4 ways this could all play out. So, how could this end? Well, path number 1 is that things just stay tense, a sort of low-level confrontation where both sides keep testing each other.
Path 2, China decides it's had enough and escalates, maybe with economic sanctions of its own. Path 3, the US quietly backs down, deciding it's just too expensive or too much of a hassle to keep it up. And then there's Path 4, the most dangerous one, an accident. A boarding operation goes wrong, somebody fires a shot, and this limited standoff explodes into a major international crisis. So why are we spending all this time on one incident in the Caribbean? Why does it matter so much? Because when you zoom out, you realize this isn't just about Venezuela or oil tankers. This is about the future shape of the entire global system. What you're seeing here is a live preview of the shift from a world with one superpower to a world with several competing powers. And guess what? It's messy, it's dangerous. And it happens in these little flashpoints, just like this one, where a rising power decides to test the limits of the established order. There's a quote from the source material that just nails it. It says, "Venezuela is the battleground where these competing claims meet." Think about that. The country of Venezuela is almost beside the point. It's just become the proxy battlefield where America's claim to dominate its own hemisphere runs headfirst into China's claim to be a global economic power with interests everywhere. So, get used to it. This is the new normal. Contested regions, strategic resources being used as weapons, and vital shipping lanes turning into flashpoints. This standoff in the Caribbean is just one front in a much larger global competition. And that leaves all of us with a really critical question. Where will the next one ignite?